100%. Thank you, Father, for the beautiful day, for the privilege and opportunity of studying together. And Lord, we thank you for your laws of health. You want us to be healthy physically, emotionally, spiritually, in every way. You want us to have a close, meaningful relationship with you. So I pray, Father, that once again you draw near to your Holy Spirit. You fill us with your Spirit in this place where we are gathered with your presence. Give us the understanding that you want us to have, Lord, that we can truly achieve the health that is your desire that we experience.
Amen.
In Christ's name, amen. Okay, well, today we're getting into section 4 of the book, Laws of Physical Health. And lesson 5, and I guess everyone's got lesson 5, right? Nobody missing 5, looks like everyone's got it. Good. Okay. So we're going to get into day 17, it's the first one. Day 17. Number 1. What evidence in the Bible indicates God is interested in our physical health? Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 14, and we'll find out some instruction there. Deuteronomy 14. And here God gives us instructions about what to eat and what not to eat. He says here, beginning with verse 4, or verse 2, "For you are a holy people to the Lord your God, and the Lord has chosen you to be a people for himself, a special treasure above all peoples who are on the face of the earth. You should not eat any detestable thing. These are the animals which you may eat: the ox, the sheep, the goat, the deer, the gazelle, the roe deer, the wild goat, the mountain goat, antelope, mountain sheep. You may eat every animal with the cloven hooves, having the hoof split into 2 parts, and that chews the cud among the animals." It's quite interesting. God, when he created the animals, he knew the day would come when man would be eating animals. That was not the original plan, as we'll see in our study here, but he made it easy for man to determine which are the animals that were created that could be eaten. And it had the split hoof and chews the cud, and he listed some of them here. Then we go to verse 7. "Nevertheless, of those that chew the cud, or have cloven hooves, you shall not eat, such as the camel." I don't think most of us are tempted to eat a camel. The hare, that's rabbit. Some people eat rabbit. The rock hyrax, I think it's like a rock badger. So they chew the cud, but do not have cloven hooves, they're unclean to you. Also the swine, that be pork, is unclean for you, because it has cloven hoof, yet does not chew the cud. You shall not eat their flesh, nor touch their dead carcass. These you may eat of all that are in the waters. You may eat all that have fins and scales. Whatever does not have fins and scales you may not eat, it's unclean to you. So it gives guidelines for the creatures that's in the sea, fresh water, or in the ocean. Fins and scales. So that means salmon, trout, things like that would be clean. Shellfish, clams, prawns, catfish, doesn't have scales. So there's some. They all serve a purpose, but the purpose is not always to be eaten. And so the question is, what evidence in the Bible indicates God's interest in our physical health? Well, he gives us counsels on health. He gives us counsels on what to eat and what not to eat. That's important to him. Makes sense. Those of us that have children, when you brought that first baby home, you were concerned about what they're going to eat, right? That's how God is with us. He wants us to eat the healthiest things so we can be healthy. Why does the Bible contains certain experience of God's people in past ages? 1 Corinthians 10:11. 1 Corinthians 10 and 11, verse 11. Now all these things happened to them as examples, and they are written for our admonition upon whom the ends of the ages have come. So the experiences you read in the Bible, we're to learn from them. They're examples for us. Learn from their experiences. That's why the Bible records the good and the bad. Not everybody in the Bible did the right thing, but we can learn from the experiences of those that did wrong, as well as from those who did the right thing. Why is the story of God delivering Israel from Egyptian bondage important to God's last day people? And as you're reading the book, it points out it's a type of God delivering his people in Christ's second coming. When he delivered them out of Egypt, that's a type, that's typology. A type is like when they would kill a lamb, that was a type pointing forward to Jesus dying. That's type, typology. Delivering from Egypt was a type, or example, of God delivering his people in the last days. Remember, there were also plagues on Egypt in the process of the deliverance. And things got worse for God's people before they were delivered out of Egypt. Similarities. Just before Jesus comes, things will not get better, they will get worse for God's people. And there are plagues that God will pour out from the world just before he delivers his people. How does the Bible describe those delivered out of Egypt? Psalm 105:37. I've always found this text kind of fascinating. Psalm 105. He also brought them out with silver and gold. Remember when they left, the Egyptians gave a lot of silver and gold things to them. And there was none feeble among his tribes. Not a feeble person among them. Why do you think that was important? They were going on a big hiking trip. So they had to be a certain level of physical health, you can imagine that, in order to leave Egypt. And that's a lesson for us. As we near the end of time, he says, I wrote down, what does the physical condition of Israel during the deliverance from Egypt teach about God's people delivered when Jesus returns? Well, they will have attained, by God's grace, total health and healing. I put down Revelation 13:15-17 as a reference. That's the chapter that talks about the Antichrist and the beast power and the mark of the beast. And someday in the future you cannot buy or sell except you have the mark of the beast. Of course, God's people will not receive the mark of the beast. And ultimately you can be killed. Now, if you can't buy or sell, well, if we're on kidney dialysis, we won't be able to be on that. If there's medication issues, we will not be able to buy them. So those who are ready to meet Jesus will be a healthy people. What about those that can't attain that level? Because of age and health conditions, God will let them go to sleep in Christ before that time. So we don't need to worry about it. Do the best we can, but if God knows it would be too much for us, we'll just simply go to sleep in Christ. But those who will be able to go through this is why we're having this series, they will have taken God's counsels on health very seriously, because it's important they have attained a level of health and healing in order to survive during what's called the time of trouble or the tribulation. What does God use to bring about the health and healing in the lives of His people? Back to Deuteronomy 7. God taking His people out of Egypt. You know, one of the great marks of inspiration in the Bible, remember Moses wrote the first 5 books. And Moses was basically raised once he, became about 12 years old. He was brought to Pharaoh's court, raised by Pharaoh's daughter. And so Moses was trained in all of the ways of the Egyptians. He was a warrior. He was trained in the medicine of the Egyptians. Well trained in all the education of the Egyptians. But when you read in the Bible, none of that is in the Bible. Only the counsels of God. So that is an amazing mark of inspiration. God let Moses know what was true and what was not true. And so you get the clean and unclean foods like we read about. You got other counsels in the Bible there. God showed Moses what should be in it. And what God did not show Moses, He left out. Now, when you look at archaeology, they had all kinds of weird teachings about health and what you do to heal and all that. None of it got in the Bible. Now over here, Deuteronomy 7, verse 12, God says, "Then it shall come to pass, because you listen to these judgments and keep and do them, that the Lord your God will keep with you the covenant and the mercy which He swore to your fathers." Then you notice verse 15, "And the Lord will take away from you all sickness, and will afflict you with none of the terrible diseases of Egypt, which you have known, but will lay them on those who hate you." So if they obey God, if they follow the laws of health, then God will use that to keep them healthy. And that applies, of course, to us today. God uses natural laws of health to keep us healthy. Now, Ellen White has an interesting statement of natural remedies in the book Ministry of Healing, and that's listed in this particular day of Devotional Day, Day 17. What does Ellen White state are the true natural remedies? Well, pure air, sunlight, abstemiousness, rest, exercise, proper diet, use of water, trust in divine power. We'll look at each of these individually as we go through the next couple times. But these are listed as the natural remedies, things that God has created for us to be healthy. How important is it that God's people follow His laws of health in preparation for Christ's second coming? Well, 1 John 3, 2 and 3. Very important verse describing God's people who are ready for Jesus. 1 John 3, 2 and 3. He said, "Beloved, now are you the children of God. It has not yet been revealed what we shall be, but we know that when He appears, when He comes back, we shall be like Him, for we shall see Him as He is. And everyone who has this hope in Him purifies himself even as He is pure." So how important is it we follow God's health laws? Well, as He says, purify ourselves. Meaning do all we can to be healthy not to have sickness and disease. Now, you know, that happens in this life. The more I learn about these things, the more I realize how surrounded we are by God's grace.
Amen.
We probably should all be dead by now. But the Lord's there, and by His grace, He's kept us going. But we need to do what we can to cooperate with Him, to be ready for the coming. So necessary to experience complete health, to prepare for Christ's coming. And as I said, those who are living when He comes, they're going to have to be healthy because of what they're going to go through. What role does teaching God's health principles play in preparing others for Christ's second coming? This is in your book. It says, we are to teach laws of health and work for the healing of the soul. So God just doesn't want you and me saved, He wants others saved. And if health plays a role in being saved, being ready for Christ's coming, well, we want to teach others about that too. So we're to teach laws of health and work for others for a healing of the soul. So it's not just working and helping people physically, it's helping them spiritually as well. You need both. Help folks physically with their health and spiritually. List some of the degenerative diseases that following the natural laws of health can benefit. These are listed in your book on day 17. Diabetes, heart disease, arthritis, these things. And you're going to see some statistics in our lesson today from studies that have been done. Describe the health regimen the participants of the Long Beach Veterans Study followed. Now this is in your book, you read that. This is what they followed. Low fat, low sugar, low salt, low cholesterol diet, and no caffeine. This was the diet they followed. You wonder, what's that going to taste like? It's amazing how our tastes can adapt to it. One way or the other. I remember the first time I went to Australia and I ate a dessert. It wasn't as sweet as our desserts. And I thought, oh, okay, so they're not used to eating stuff as sweet as we eat. But there's other countries you go to and their desserts are really sweet.
Like here?
We got pretty sweet desserts. Okay.
I have lady, my neighborhood, she never used salt when she's cooking.
Yeah, no, that's right. You gotta be careful of salt. You need some salt. We don't need some salt. But we gotta be careful. Don't get too much. So low fat, low sugar, low salt, low cholesterol diet, no caffeine. List the benefits of participants of the above study experience. Blood pressure normalized. Cholesterol and triglyceride levels fell 33%. Arteries unblocked. Most eliminated the need for drugs. Back in the 70s, a long time from now, doesn't seem that far back, but it was. I remember we were getting into some of this stuff, which back then they called health conditioning centers. Now they're lifestyle centers. And if I remember correctly, the medical science did not think that the arteries that are blocked could be reversed. And there's a fellow named Nathan Pritikin who had the Longevity Research Center in the 70s. Wasn't Adventist, I don't think he's Christian. He wasn't even a nutritionist. But he did studies and they started observing arteries being unblocked. They began realizing, you can reverse that. Well, they showed that here, that kind of diet, it would do that. You could start arteries be unblocked. How is one's spirituality affected by following God's laws of health? Well, relationship with God is strengthened, and we'll see why. The relationship with God is strengthened. Now we move toward diet and physical health. Following a lifestyle, I should say healthy lifestyle, including a proper diet, is a matter of being a good steward of God, worshiping Him, and being His holy people. Now, we looked at these concepts before. They're a matter of being good stewards. In other words, He's the owner. He owns our body, and He can tell us how to take care of it. So we're to be good stewards of His property. Worship. Remember I told you, everything in the New Testament is worship. Whatever you eat, drink, whatever you do, do all glory to God. Everything's worship. You're either obeying God or not. If we're obeying God, we're worshiping God. If we're not, then we're worshiping something else. And a holy people as well. According to the Framingham study, this is a very famous study, Framingham study. What were the benefits for men who ate 3 servings of fruits or vegetables per day? 45% decrease in risk of death from stroke. That's a pretty good deal. What cancer risk did a high vegetable diet reduce? Colon cancer, we've heard that a long time, if you have fiber. Colon cancer reduces the risk. What was the benefit for women who followed the practice of eating 3 or more servings of whole grains per day, according to the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition? Well, reduced risk of coronary heart disease by 25 to 50%. As I see on the news nowadays, that's one of the risks that has tended to be ignored in women. They usually think of men having a heart attack and don't think so much of women, but women are just as susceptible as men.
Don't you get gluten from grains? Is that,
Grains. Yeah, gluten would come from wheat. What benefit related to eating whole grains was revealed in the 10-year Finland study? Well, reduced type 2 diabetes risk by 35 to 61%. As I thought about this series, as I've been putting it together, it's quite a few years ago I wrote the book. You know, if we get 1 or 2 beneficial lifestyle changes out of this series, it's been worthwhile.
Amen.
We may not change everything.
True.
My guess is it'll reinforce some things we already know,
True.
and we'll say, oh good, I'm doing that, that makes me feel good now, I am doing it. Secondly, it will maybe get us over the top of something we've been wanting to do, but then we learn a little more about it, I think I want to do that. See?
Amen.
So it may bring in a lifestyle change that we have been thinking about, but we haven't done it. And maybe we'll learn something new, and then it'll help us there. But, you know, no one's going to change everything 100% all the time right away. It's a process. It's a process. According to another study, what was the relationship between eating whole grains and stroke and death rates? 48% decrease in death rates. Well, you know, God made the grains whole, right? Not refined. Doesn't mean you're never going to eat anything that has refined grains in it, but it's a good idea to eat whole grains as best you can. You know, it's amazing how culture affects us. If you look back at the Depression and after the Depression, many times people after the Depression wanted to eat white bread because whole wheat, that was for poor people.
That's right.
You know, back in the Depression, you didn't have much money. You ate the whole wheat, rough bread. But once the Depression's over, you got money, I'm going to get some of that white bread. So that was a cultural thing. And it's interesting when you look at cultures. What a strong influence cultural attitudes have on diet. That's a whole study in itself. It would be fascinating. What's the only medium through which the mind and soul are developed for God? Well, let's go to Romans 12, 1 and 2. Now we're going to see why healthy diet is important in our relationship with God. Romans 12. I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So he's connecting our bodies, our physical beings, and our mind with our relationship with God. So what is the only medium through which the mind and soul can be developed? The body. God created us a physical being, and he communicates to us through our body. What was the original diet God planned for man? Original diet. Well, you go to Genesis 1:29. And God said, see, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which on the face of all the earth. Now this is before sin, by the way. This is the creation. And every tree whose fruit yields seed to you, it shall be food for you. So you had fruits, grain, nuts, and the tree of life. That's a big deal, that tree of life. Then sin came along. You didn't have the tree of life any longer. So you go over here to chapter 3, verse 18. He says, both thorns and thistles it shall bring forth, and you shall eat of the herb of the field. He added vegetables. See, you got to kill the vegetable before you eat it. You know what I mean? When you pull it out of the ground, it's over for that potato. Okay? But before sin, you weren't going to kill anything. So you had fruits, grains, vegetables. So you answer there, fruits, grains, nuts, then vegetables. No meat yet. You don't get meat in the diet until after the flood. Remember God told Noah, bring in the animals, unclean, what, 2 by 2, clean, 7 by 7. There needed to be more clean animals brought in for 2 reasons. One, clean animals were used for sacrifice, and clean animals could be eaten. So he needed to bring more clean than unclean. Now, unclean animals serve a purpose, but not food. So you've got a progression of diet. You've got fruits, grains, nuts, tree of life. Then they sin, no tree of life, fruits, grains, nuts, vegetables. Then after the flood, that kind of did away with a lot of stuff. The earth was kind of wiped out. Then God added clean meats after the flood. So after the flood, you had fruits, grains, nuts, vegetables, and clean meats. But as time has gone on, the animal world's not what it used to be. Everything's decaying and deteriorating. And so as you discover, and by the way, the lifespan went down as they started eating meat. So meat's a little harder on the system. And as time gone on, man's come to realize if you can do without meat, you're probably better off. And statistics show that. Now, to be a Seventh-day Adventist, you don't have to be vegetarian. You can still eat meat, but clean meat, as we've seen listed. But many Adventists are vegetarian. I can say personally, I became a vegetarian when I was in my 30s. You know you're a vegetarian when you go on a trip by yourself and you don't eat meat. Because if you're not really a vegetarian, you go out on on a trip somewhere and you're going to find a reason to eat meat. But I went on a trip back, I was living in Washington, went back to Andrews for some classes. And I didn't eat any meat on that trip. And I was in my early 30s, and I realized, okay, I'm a vegetarian now. And there's diabetes and heart disease in my family, genetically. But I've had neither. Now I could lose a little weight, but you know, and as I thought about that, I've had a very low animal fat diet through the years. And there are studies, I remember in my last church, they were doing a health class, and they tried to induce diabetes. They could not induce diabetes with sugar. However, they could do it with fat. So animal fat may very well be more of a diabetes-inducing, causing factor in the lifestyle than even sugar. But sugar, you know, we're also told you better eat meat than large quantities of sugar. So, you know, keep balance there. But it's a blessing. The diet that God's given us, I can tell you from personal experience, it's a blessing. What are the benefits Ellen White gives for following the original diet of mankind? She says positive impact on our strength, endurance, and vigor of intellect. Well, the older I get, the more I appreciate those things. Strength, endurance, and vigor of intellect. So when we eat the right diet, it's going to benefit us these ways. What should these benefits, probably should be the word why should these benefits be of interest to God's last day people? These benefits will prepare them for Christ's second coming. If you want vigor of intellect, sharp mentally, God communicates with you through your brain. We want a clear brain as much as possible. Then, okay, we want these benefits as we prepare for Christ's coming. Again, it won't be an easy time. We're going to need strength, as she said, endurance. It's all going to be needed for those ready to meet Jesus. A far-reaching decision. Getting into the experience of Daniel. What was King Nebuchadnezzar's purpose in choosing Daniel and his three friends? Let's go to Daniel 1. Those of you that have been with us on the prophecy seminar, you remember some of this. Daniel 1. Now remember, Daniel, he's a prisoner of war. Babylon came in and conquered Israel. Took a bunch of the Jews back to Babylon. And Daniel 1, verse 3 and 4. Then the king instructed Ashpenaz, the master of the eunuchs, to bring some of the children of Israel, and some of the king's descendants, and some of the nobles, young men in whom there was no blemish, but good-looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge, and quick to understand, who had ability to serve in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the language and literature of the Chaldeans. So, what was his purpose? He wanted to groom them to be leaders in his empire. And notice who Daniel and his friends, you know, they were, what group included. It was descendants of the king and also nobles. So that's a pretty high standing group that Daniel and his friends are associated with. He wanted to groom them to be leaders in the empire. There's some wisdom there. Nebuchadnezzar had some wisdom. What problem did Daniel and his three friends face because of the food and drink the king provided them? Daniel 1, verse 5. And the king appointed for them daily provision of the king's delicacies, and of the wine which he drank, and 3 years of training for them, so that at the end of that time they might serve before the king. And then notice verse 8, but Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore requested the chief of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. So what problem did Daniel face here? The king's food and drink were not in harmony with God's laws. Faced with a problem. Big problem. What could be the result of Daniel and his friends refusing to eat the king's food and drink? Killed. Yeah. What rational reasons could Daniel and his friends have used to eat the king's food? You know, we're very good at rationalizing. We can find a lot of good reasons not to do what God asks us to do and think it's justified. They could say obeying the king would enable them to be in positions of influence for God. Sounds like a pretty good, reasonable logic. Why stir up the situation? I mean, it's just a matter of eating and drinking, not a big deal. If we follow and go along with the plan, we're going to be up there in the upper circles of leadership. And then we can influence them for God. It's very logical rationalization. Not correct, but what decision did Daniel make? Well, we read that in verse 8. He purposed not to defile himself with the king's food and drink. Pretty strong purpose. And I truly believe, you know, this is in chapter 1 of Daniel. If Daniel had not been victorious and being faithful to God in chapter 1, the rest of the book wouldn't have been written. You never know one decision, the consequences of that in the future. One way or the other. Certain decision that may not seem significant could lead downward or upward. So we need God's wisdom and guidance, wisdom of the Word, Holy Spirit conviction.
You notice that he didn't say, well, let me have just the clean meats and not the bad ones. No, he just
Yeah.
cleared it completely.
Clear it out.
Because he knew that it could.
Yeah, that's right. He's taking a full stand, and that's a strong stand. How had God prepared the way for Daniel's decision here? Daniel 1:9. And God had brought Daniel in favor and goodwill with the chief of eunuchs. Good lesson. You are not alone in making your decisions in favor of God. Sometimes it may seem like you're alone, but you're not. God is there, and God had intervened. He had brought Daniel in favor with the man who was in charge of this whole thing. God can do the same for you in whatever situation you're in. What test did Daniel propose to convince the prince of eunuchs that God's diet was best? Verse 12 and 13. He says, please test your servants for 10 days and let them give us vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance be examined before you and the appearance of the young men who ate the portion of the king's delicacies. And as you see fit, so deal with your servants. It's important to notice Daniel's attitude. He did not say, I won't do it. I don't care what you say, I'm serving the God of heaven, and you're a pagan, and I am not going to do it. How do you think that goes? You see, we got to be careful of the spirit that's in us and how we relate to things. Okay? No. And again, God gave him wisdom. He proposed a test that would be a win-win. Win-win. Because what did the prince of the eunuch want? He wanted Daniel and his friends to be healthy. And Daniel says, yes, that's what I want too. So I tell you what, give us a 10-day test and see if what you want to happen, see if it happens. And remember, God had brought him in favor with this prince of the eunuch. You know what could have happened to the prince of the eunuch if this... You know what could have happened to the prince of the eunuch if it hadn't have gone well? He could have been killed. So he's putting himself on the line here too. So a 10-day test. What was the result of the 10-day test? 15. And at the end of 10 days, their features appeared better and fatter in flesh, and all the young men who ate the portion of the king's delicacies. So their countenance was fairer, fatter than the others. Years ago, again, back in the 70s, myself and a couple doctors went down to Santa Monica, California, where this Nathan Pritikin had the Longevity Research Institute. And he was one of the first ones that started bringing attention to diet and exercise. We kind of lost it, if you will, in general. We weren't doing much. Not much of anyone else was doing anything either. And but he was doing something, and he was getting amazing results. And so I and a couple of doctors, we went there one evening, and he was nearing the end of his program. It was a 4-week program. And as we were talking to him, he made the comment. He said, you know, after the first week or two, the people are complaining. Oh, this food, the exercise, I don't like it. But he said after about 2 weeks, you don't have more complaints. Everything's pretty good because they're getting benefit. And I thought about that. Daniel said 10 days. So there seems to be something in our body, 10 days to 2 weeks. If we make a change, within 10 days to 2 weeks, we will see benefit. And it was proven out with Nathan Pritikin, as, of course, Daniel proved out here. What was the relationship between Daniel and his 3 friends' decision to be faithful to God in the area of diet and God blessing them? Verse 17. As for these 4 men, God gave them knowledge and skill in all literature and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. And if you notice verse 20, and in all matters of wisdom and understanding about which the king examined them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers who were in all his realms. Success. You see, God has a way of multiplying. We add, he multiplies. They sought to follow God, and it wasn't they were just a little bit better. It says what? They were 10 times better.
10 times in 10 days.
What lesson does Daniel's story teach us about God's last day people? Philippians 2:5. It says, let this mind be in you, which is also in Christ Jesus. So it teaches the importance of health principles and being like Jesus, like Christ, ready for his coming, having the mind of Christ. So being like Christ, having the mind of Christ. All through the Bible there's typology. Daniel and his friends, what they went through is a type of those who will be ready in the last days to meet Jesus. And as we've seen, diet, what they ate, what they drank, played a major role in being effectively used for God. Exercise and health. How did God indicate man's need of exercise, even in the Garden of Eden, Genesis 2:15? And the Lord God took the man and put him in the garden of Eden to tend and keep it. So man was placed in an environment where physical exercise was required. Even in the Garden of Eden before sin, you see, we're created physical beings, and there's certain things we need. We need the right food, of course, water. And even before sin, we needed to exercise. And they were placed in a situation that required some exercise, some work to be done. What did Ellen White write about the benefits of exercise? She says exercise is essential for body organs to function and the brain work effectively. I'm sure you found that to be true, especially when you think of doing mental work. If you've got more of a sedentary job or activity, like ministry, I spend a lot of time studying, putting together these presentations, sermons and stuff. This gets pretty intense sometimes, and I'm sure you found it too. To get up and walk, I actually feel it in my brain when I get up and walk and get away from it. It's good. Where if you just keep staying there and staying there and staying there, you'll be less efficient than if you just get up and walk around for a minute. So it's good. She's right. Essential for body organs to function and the brain to work effectively. What did Ellen White write about the importance of children exercising? Lack of children exercising will negatively affect body and brain functions. The same thing applies to children. That's why recess, I guess they still call it that, is important for children. And young children should never be taxed too much mentally. They need more of the physical side than on the mental side. When you look at some of the writings of Ellen White, she even talked about, 8 years old or so, waiting later to start school. One thing I can say, you see I quote Ellen White a lot on these studies. She was writing back in the 1800s and early 1900s. You know what medical science was like back then? They advocated smoking, tobacco for some stuff. If you were sick, keep all the curtains closed in the sick room. Stay in bed. Don't get up. And all kinds of weird stuff. Whenever they would do surgery, I was telling Patty this when she was about to go to surgery for her knee. They used to sharpen their knife on their bootstrap and cut. And if there was no infection, it wasn't healing right. They truly believed you had to have infection to heal right. I was out there. No idea about germs, bacteria. They'd go from one patient to the other and not wash hands, and they'd wonder, why this patient had the disease, now this one does. What's going on there? All kinds of strange ideas. And when you read what Ellen White said about health, she was way ahead of her time. So these counsels that I'm quoting you on health, from her are strong evidence that there was more working in her ministry than just human knowledge. It's kind of like Moses again. Moses was a child of Egypt and their medical science and their understanding. But when he wrote in the Bible, none of that got in. Well, Ellen White was a child of her day, 1800s, late or early 1900s. Again, the wrong stuff didn't get in. The right stuff got in. So it's a reinforcement it's been to me that she certainly had insights more than of human origin. What benefits of exercise did the Journal of American Medical Association list? Reduces risk of obesity, high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, osteoporosis, many cancers, Anxiety and depression. If you feel anxious or depressed, go for a walk. It'll help. And if you do it in the fresh air, that's better. And start thanking God for the flowers and trees and birds you see. Yeah, walking. Many, many benefits from walking, from exercise, I should say. This is a fascinating statistic. What did the same journal article, I made some spelling mistakes, say about smokers who exercise? A smoker who exercises has better chance of surviving a heart attack than a non-smoker who does not exercise. Can you imagine that? That's true.
Every time you smoke.
Exercise has a better chance of survival if he smokes than a non-smoker who has a heart attack and doesn't exercise. How many deaths per year in the United States is it estimated occurs because of the lack of regular exercise? 250,000. That's what it does. It leads to all these other diseases. What have studies shown to be the #1 factor of good health? Exercise. As Adventists, we probably would conclude diet, because we've had a strong emphasis on diet, but it's not true. Diet's important. Exercise is even more important than diet. What do studies reveal about exercise and the occurrence of cancer in both men and women? Significantly reduces risk of cancer. This was an interesting lady, Eula Weaver. This was in a study. Eula Weaver. She had arthritis, atherosclerosis, could walk only 50 feet, and was on many drugs. She was a senior citizen. Described the benefits she experienced from exercise. In this actual case study, within 2 years, she jogged every day and won the Senior Olympics and was off all drugs. Just from exercise. Amazing. What did Ellen White say was the best exercise and why? Walking. Because all organs are put into use. A lot of folks run. I ran for a while. I'm not built for running, it seems. I'm more built for walking. You know, some people enjoy running. You do have to be careful with your joints because there's pounding going on. But walking, she says walking is the best exercise. And I'd say if possible, walk out in fresh air in the sunlight. Take deep breaths, thank the Lord for your blessings. It'll make it be a good blessing. Why is good health practice a moral issue? We owe obedience to God because He's our Creator and our Redeemer. Both counts. And your next lesson will cover water, sunlight and fresh air, rest, and sacrifice. Okay, let's have prayer. Father, we thank you for the time we've had to study, and Lord, I pray you work in each of our lives. You know the changes that need to be made, and I pray that by your Spirit you'll speak to each of our hearts and lead us to make the changes that we can truly achieve the health, whether it's physical or emotional or spiritual, that you want us to have. And we thank you in Christ's name. Amen. Okay, we want to get the